Okay, so September 8th, welcome to the class AD 1111 or Graphics 1. I'll start off with an evaluation of your first exercise. Um, and I'm showing one example by Fiona. I don't know if she's already in. Congratulations. Um, Actually, there are a lot of other examples that I could have used because most of you did very well. Congratulations. Also, I'm very proud. And I think I've been very generous in giving the grade. Also, I will return your papers after this lecture. Okay. But meantime, let me make some comments on, in general, on the submission that I have observed. Okay, so unfortunately, my instruction wasn't very clear. I was actually thinking of just a 1 inch margin on the top and on the right side. But what happened is most of you, or not really, yeah, most of you made like ended up with 2 inch margins on the top and then the right, but that's all right. But then you should also consider a margin at the right side. Okay, although it's not specified, but it's a matter of composition. So if you letter all the way to the edge of the paper, it doesn't look good. It's not so neat. So it's actually up to you how you do that. Um, the good thing about this example that I showed you is that okay, so she managed to just use 1 inch margin on the top and then the left side, and yeah, left side, and then she also gave some space on the right side. So some of you really wrote letters, words until the very edge. Um, and then what I like here also is that she gave a space in between each quote. Okay, and most of you did not do that. And I think I mentioned it in the online session last time. Even the margin, I think I clarified it last time, but I did not give any deductions on that. Um, so putting a space in between the quotes make it more readable. Otherwise, everything would look so cramped. And then also, I wrote here that note, create own style. So eventually, if you keep on doing letters, you will come up with your own font, no, or own style of doing the letters. So the guidelines that I showed you are just for practice, so for startup. But it seems that some of you are already um, familiar with lettering, and I guess this must be because of senior high, and it's a good thing. Um, Also, what I noticed in some of the works is that in the paper where the letters are supposed to be inked, you also ink the margin. So that's not necessary. So I was wondering why. Um, and then guidelines. So here in the example, the guidelines are barely seen. You can see some traces of it. So there are some of you who really made the guidelines very clear. Okay, so that's why I commented it's too dark or too thick. Um, it would be good to use a mechanical pencil for the guideline so that you really have that consistent thin line. Because if you use the ordinary pencil, sometimes it tends to get broad, the broader, no? The stroke becomes broad. So anyway, so this is the my comments on the submissions in general. I'm still waiting for two other persons to submit. So there were those who are a bit late. Um, in these times where we're not sure whether the internet connection is really consistent, so we have to give some chance to them, but just little deduction for being too late. Okay, so let's go to our lecture proper for today. We call this the language of lines. Okay, this is module 2. I start off again with a quote. It says, thick lines, thin lines, lines with short or long dashes or both. If you don't speak the language of all these line types, an architecture or design drawing can be pretty mystifying. Okay, mystifying, I guess what he wanted to say is that it's confusing. So you end up really looking mystified, uh, getting confused on what's happening here. So the ones who made this comment or quote are actually the author of the first part of the lecture that I'm going to give you. And this is taken from a website, which I also acknowledge here. So the website is Ask an Architect, what different line types in architecture and design drawing means. So you can also look it up later. I like the way they presented the lecture because they have a consistent example, and the example is architectural. But first, let's comment on what is solid and dashed or versus dashed or dotted lines. So solid lines indicate visible or real objects or surfaces. So simply that, okay? So you have an object, you draw it, it's visible, it's real, therefore it's drawn using solid lines. Dots or dashed lines indicate something that is not seen or hidden, so it's not visible. Although it may be real, but then it's not there. How is it hidden? There are two ways that it can be hidden. First is it is right in front of you that you have to remove it so that you can see what's behind, or it is behind that object so you cannot see it, but it is very important. That's why you have to show an outline but show it in hidden lines. Okay, now there are also lines which are thick and thin. So thick lines are something that are close to you, closer to you, like an elevation or building section, and something more primary like the edge of a wall in a plan. So there's a hierarchy involved. No? So, but thin lines is something farther away. Okay, so if you have like a wall here and another wall at the back, and then they have a line, they have an edge. So the edge of the wall at the back, farther away, can be thinner. Okay, so that you can, there's a sort of perspective even if you're drawing in 2D. Or something less important. For example, you have a panel, and then the important profile of the panel you draw with thick line, but then there are decorations inside, probably some carvings, etc. And if, or sometimes the grain of the wood, that can be thin lines because you can do without it, or you can just put it there to enhance your drawing. But they're not the essential part of the drawing. And we can see examples later on. So this one, I'm doing a reconstruction of a retablo here in Maribohok, Bohol. Um, and then so what happened is the whole retablo. The retablo is the altar piece at the back of the sanctuary. Um, so the whole church collapsed, and all of these pieces were scattered. So I have to put them back like jigsaw puzzle, and then draw them, and then use that drawing as guide to reconstruct. But on the left drawing, I did that in just one line weight, no. But then on the right, important parts, the important component are thick, and then inside are thin, unless there's divisions. So I use medium lines. So you can see how much enhanced the drawing is, especially around the arches, no, and then also along the top. Here I missed out a part, so I'm sorry for that. So it helps. It helps convey something which you wanted to emphasize to whoever you're showing your drawing to. So solid lines, as mentioned, so we call them visible lines. In plan and elevation, they refer to a visible edge or profile, thicker or thinner depending on importance or distance from the viewer, as we mentioned earlier. So here in this example, we have a floor plan of a kitchen, and then there are solid lines here in the counter because this is the edge of a countertop. Okay, so I hope it's clear in your screen. No? And also you use solid lines at the edge of the stairs, the stair nosings, because they are visible to us. Okay, so these are solid lines. The cabinets are solid lines, and then the counter here, even the water closet and the sink, they're solid lines because you can see them. They're not hidden. Um, this is an example in terms of elevation. Um, refers to a visible edge or profile thicker. Okay. This solid line is the edge of the cabinet. It's thicker than the lines to the left of it because those are showing the details of the cabinet door. So that's what I mentioned earlier. So you just want to emphasize the shape of the cabinet. Okay, that there's a cabinet here. But what's inside that shape is not so important. Okay, so we use a thinner line. And then here we have a solid line in the uh, edge of the door jamb. Now, two solid lines with a hatch or shaded fill. In plan and elevation, this indicates a section wall or something which is sectioned. Um, Sometimes when you section or you cut a wall and you try to show inside, in reality, well, technically you should show what's really inside. There are what we call hatch in AutoCAD, which you use a pattern which you use to fill up the space. Um, in by default, if you're not going to show details, you can just use a like this, no, a series of lines. I think this one, what he used is a fill, which is only a light gray fill. No? But you can also use some lines to fill that up. Otherwise, you actually draw the what's inside. And there are symbols, for example, if it's concrete, but that's more advanced. So for now, we just fill it with um, shaded fill or hatch. Okay, simple hatch. You will see that later on in your exercise. Now, there are two types of hatches here, or two types of fills, one light and one darker. The light one are existing, and then the darker one indicates a new wall. Okay, so again, we're trying to communicate to the, say, to the engineer or to the owner. So we have to tell them that, okay, I'm adding a wall here. So for them to appreciate it, we colored it or shaped it in a darker hue. That technique is very important if you're doing renovation because you'll be dealing with existing structures. A short dashed line, we also call that hidden line. So in plan and elevation, it indicates many things. No? It indicates an edge before a cutting plane. The one that I told you, it's so close to you, you have to remove it. To indicate hidden edge, considered to be important. To indicate an object that is expected to be there. For example, you expect that there should be a refrigerator here, but you're not going to draw the refrigerator. Instead, you're just going to show the ref in hidden line. Now, why is that? Because a drawing is also a contract, okay, when it's used in construction. So therefore, if you draw something there, you have to provide it. But then, if you just provide the space and not the object, like the refrigerator or the furniture, but then you just wanted to show them that it is located here and that there's enough space around it, so you draw it in hidden lines. And then you also use that to indicate void, like for example, we might have an example later on. Let me see if there's an example here. So no, no. In this drawing we have the cupboards, which are, since it's above the cutting plane in our floor plan, so it's indicated here as hidden line. And then here in the door we also have, say, maybe um, it's an opening. So there's like a door opening without the door. Okay, so there's still a wall above. So that's why it's indicated in a hidden line. So if there is, for example, a hole on the floor, so and then it's square, for example, this one here could be a chute where you throw down the garbage and it goes down. So sometimes you also indicate an X with a hidden line. So here, no? This pair of short dashed line is an X, indicating that this is an open pass-through, not a solid wall. That's what I meant. No? And then here, these short dashed lines are indicating the shelves inside the cabinet. So it's behind the cabinet doors. The shelves are hidden from view. And then this is similar to the microwave, but its short dashed line is slightly thicker, simply so it's easier to tell it apart from the lines marking the shelves. So this is what I meant by objects that are supposed to be there. So there's a microwave here in this shelf. So, but it's not really part of the what you're going to provide. But you wanted to tell the client that the microwave is here. So you show that as hidden line. But since you have so many hidden lines, because the shelves are also made of hidden lines, so you make that thicker to differentiate. Okay. A long dashed line is also a hidden line. But then that dash becomes longer if the object or the edge is farther away. Okay. When I say farther away from our picture plane. So when we cut the floor plan, that portion, that plane where we cut is the reference. So an object that goes farther away that direction or farther away towards you, okay, becomes a longer dashed line. So like this one here, there's an eaves of a roof. Okay, so this is farther away from the cupboard here. An alternating long and short dashed line is what we call the center line. So it indicates the center of something where both sides are a mirror image of each other. So if you have an object, but then when you cut it into half, this side is not the same as the other side, so that does not apply. Okay. For example, here the window, you cut that into half, so that side and this side are the same. So this is the center line, and they use center line because they're going to make a dimension from the edge of the wall to the center of the window, and then center of also this wall, and then center of the window again. Okay, you need to dimension here in the water closet from the edge of the wall to the center of the water closet, so you indicate that with the center line. A single curved line forming part of a circle is normally used to indicate the swing of something that has a pivot, especially a door. It could also be a window, a swinging window, a casement window. So here, you see that there's a door here on top. There's also a cabinet door, but you indicate that the door swings like that. So it's made of a thin line, okay, thinner than the door itself. And here's another door at the bottom. So other types, I forgot to put the source. I'm sorry. we have what we call extension and dimension lines. So we have when we take measurements, when we indicate measurements, we use this. So the extension lines are the ones that almost touch the object and extends outward. Okay, so I said almost touching. Okay, it should not touch. There should be a small gap between the object and the extension line. And then the one that actually measures the edge is the dimension line, and normally we use an arrowhead. Sometimes we use different things like a tick or a circle, but in our convention, in our plate, we will practice using arrowheads. The arrowhead, the best is something narrow and short. No? I mean, long but narrow, something like this that you see here. So it should not be like a very big and then filled arrowhead so that it looks like black, so it looks dirty. Leaders are, say, this one. When you have to put notes and indicate where that note refers to, you use a leader. The arrow at the end of the leader is used to indicate the exact edge, but then if you are indicating just a surface, you use a dot. Okay, so here, for example, this arrow might be talking about the diameter of the circle, and then this other one, this other leader might be talking about the material used or whether the texture, right, smooth or rough. So that's how we use the leaders. Break lines, there are two types, short break lines and long break lines. If the object, we use break lines when the object is too long and then we don't really need that. It's desirable to just shorten it. Anyway, it's not important to show it very long, so that we can fit the object in a paper. So in this example, if the object to be shortened is very wide, you use this symbol. It's made of a thin line. It's like a it's like the something like the medical, no, a machine. But then the other one is a short, made of a thick line, short break. Example, this one is a shorter line or shorter part of the object. So you just make that in a different symbol, use a different symbol. But there are other conventions. If it's circular, then it has to be drawn like what you see here below. Okay, so you break that pipe into that so that you can see what's at the tip of both ends. Cutting plain line. I've been talking about cutting plane when I talk about the floor plan. So, or if you're going to make a section, so you're going to cut the plan somewhere and then show that direction, what the view where the arrow is pointing at. So normally it's a thick line, and usually we use this long and then too short dash and then long dash then too short. So it's like we call this a phantom line. Or this is also acceptable, but this one is more of the convention. Okay, so we see here, I wanted to cut this right here in the middle, but it's also possible to cut it not straight, but we call this offset. Okay, because we wanted to cut this because we want to show what's in here and what this is. Okay, but then instead of showing two sections, one showing only this and the other one showing the other feature, so we can use an offset. Okay, and then somehow that's still understandable for technical people. Viewing plain line is like a cutting plain line, except that it's not cutting anything. It just shows you that we are viewing this part. This drawing views this part. Okay, so for example here, If I want to draw this, I will tell that, okay, we're viewing this, and then I put a reference to a drawing here. Phantom line, I mentioned earlier, but then the difference is that this is thick when used is a cutting plane line, but if it is used as a phantom line only, it's thin. And it says here, it's used to indicate alternate position of moving parts, adjacent position of moving parts, adjacent position of related parts, and repetitive details. So this could be a moving part if you move until here, or this can pivot until this direction. So we use the phantom line. So this is an example application where everything is there. I don't know if it's everything really. So short break line, because the object is a small mechanical device. Phantom line, because this arm swings to that direction, maybe until that direction only. And then you have the dimensions. Okay, so it's going to show a view from B to B. So this is the view here and lower right. So this is what you see here. But this case, A to A is section. It's inside. So we have this, and this is a section line. We talk about two thick lines or anything, a thick line, enclosed thick line, and then a fill. And then we have a center line here. And then the hidden line, so behind this surface, so there's actually, the cavity actually looks like this. Okay. This is a leader, and then that's another center line to show that this center of the circle moves towards the center of the circle. What we did discuss here is the chain line. Actually, I don't know what that is, but we hardly use it in architecture anyway. Okay, so when we draw, we use different medium. Basically, I ask you for lettering to use pencil and ink. So in ink, we use different line weights. So I think this is a Rotring brand. Common are 0.1, 0.2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, then 8. So you can use, for example, 3 types of lines on three weights. So thick one, medium, and then a thin. So you can choose 0.1, then 0.3, then 0.5, or 0.6 if you want to emphasize it. So, but you don't really need to buy a Rotring or Staedtler or any branded, any branded technical pen, as long as you give me the lines that I want, no, and it's consistent. If you use the felt tip technical pen like Pilot, it's good only at the start. Much later, the felt part, the felt tip, it broadens. So your 0.1 later on might become like 0.3 because you consistently use it, put pressure, so it gets destroyed. So it's not long lasting, but I think it's meant to be disposable anyway. If you use pencil, there are different kinds of pencils also depending on the hardness of the lead. The ones here, between 9H to 4H, commonly used for construction line. So that's why it's hard. So even if you put pressure, you get only a thin or a very light line. And then the medium one, H and 2H, you're more familiar with Mongol number 2, that's 2H, are common lead graded used for line work. H and F are for lettering and sketching. So it's between 3H and B. Beyond that, 2B to 7B is for artworks, okay, for shading. It's almost like charcoal pencil. So we don't use that because it easily smudges, it makes your work dirty. Okay, so your exercise number 2 will be about the language of lines, of course. And again, I'm making a different exercise than the other class. So when you compare, you'll notice it, and please stop comparing. I'll ask you to draw this in ink, in A4 paper, follow the language of lines. So this is scaled 1 is to 40. You can use a tracing paper the size of A4. You can trace this if you want. But then when you use the ink, so so if it's supposed to be thick, then use a thick line. Uh, when you ink, no, you use a bigger, a thicker a pen. If it is supposed to be light, like the dimensions, okay, so, or you can draw this from scratch since all the dimensions are in here. If you feel it's more comfortable, okay. Of course, you should include the dimensions and also all the notations, all the leaders here, uh, using your very good penmanship, which you just showed me in exercise number 1. Okay, so you include the label here, plan of extended kitchen, scale 1 is to 40. So exactly as it is. Okay, it fits in 1 is to 40. I did this in AutoCAD, so to make sure that it fits. This is due. We're not going to meet next meeting on Thursday because we're going to have a quiz. Okay, so that's all that you're going to do. The quiz will be available at 8 o'clock on Thursday. It will be posted. Um, so I can give you until Monday next week to submit this, or Sunday evening, so that I can check on it on Monday. Okay, and then I can make comments when we meet again on Tuesday. Okay, that's it. Um, let me see. Are there any questions? So there are 42 of you now. Okay, in the chat box, there's no questions. So I hope that's clear. And anyway, if you do have questions about the exam, I mean, about the exercise, so just send me a note, private note or what, no? Uh, and then I'll answer all of those questions. Also, yep, there's a question, Lance. What is it? No matter ang centering sa drawing, yes. Okay, because you're not only going to draw, you're actually presenting. Okay, so the paper, that's why in the design I have to comment, for example, when they make very small perspectives and then the paper is big. Okay, so the perspective might be done very beautifully, but compared to the size of the paper, it's very small that when you see it, it looks funny. Okay, so um, just imagine showing it to someone you respect, no? If it's worth showing without you getting embarrassed. Okay, so um, if you draw it and then it's like at the bottom corner of your paper and then so much space around it, it looks awkward. It sort of makes you think that this person does not know really how to do things, know how to draw. Should we add margins? If so, what size? No margins. So just show the drawing as it is that I showed you. You can put your name. I think you should put your name anywhere on the paper, on the top or below it. Short band paper, I think I wrote there in the instruction that it should be A4. A4. So if you don't have A4, use a long band paper, cut it to the size of A4. Okay. Or if you can use tracing paper also, cut it to the size of A4. So anything else? So that question, short pen paper, was from theories. Okay, anyway, I'll post the instructions in Google Classroom. I have to write them down. I have not written them down. And then post it afterwards after I posted the result of your exercise number 1. Um, so don't worry if the grades in exercise number 1 is low, although I've been very generous about the grades because we're still starting. There's still many ways to catch up. And anyway, midterm is only 30% of the whole final grade. Um, what if we don't have the 1:40 scale, sir? You have to make the scale. Okay. If it was not taught to you, you can Google it, or you have to divide a 1 meter or your ruler in in meters by 40, and then the result is your 1 meter in 1:40. So you have to make your own ruler with the 1:40 scale. Parchment paper, tracing paper, they're acceptable. Um, but parchment paper, I don't know whether they can um, absorb ink very well. So just try it out first. That's why I would like to recommend tracing paper because it's really made for ink drawings. Okay, so let's not delay so much. Anyway, you can still ask me questions anytime between now until the deadline. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to me, for coming. There are 42 of you earlier, including myself. So have a nice day. Goodbye.